HBO's Bill Maher went head-to-head with astronomist and physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson over what makes a man, a real battle of the experts here. Let's listen.
Match more interesting for the viewer. So if we can split wrestling into 10 categories, and that becomes the wrestling match.
But all men against each other.
Correct. So,
okay,
so now, I get
sort
that.
of key point.
Okay. Okay, so all I'm saying is, what is it that makes the man the man? Is it the hormones? Okay. Is it, if it's the hormones and you decide to give yourself a different cocktail of hormones, I'm making this up, by the way. I'm not saying it should happen this way. It's a way to start thinking about it.
It would be...
Maybe the track meets have hormone categories.
And maybe giving yourself the wrong hormones is deleterious to your health. Would you not admit that? Do you think we can just safely do things like this?
So you feel this way because you're so deeply concerned about the health of the people who are trying to find their place on the gender spectrum? You care about their health so much that you don't want them to go through that?
It's not something that keeps me up at night, but when the subject comes up, I care about them like I care about all people. Mm-hmm. So if there is something...
You do, by the way. You think about all people.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Oh, okay. You're being
sincere? Think about all people. No, I'm being sincere.
Yeah, I do. Yes. Yeah. Old school liberal.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want all people to have, make this very challenging world that we live in better. So that's why there's honest debate about this issue.
Do you think Bill Maher wants to ban adults from being able to get hormone therapy and transition if that's what they want to do?
I don't think he wants to ban adults. I don't know that he wants to ban anyone, but he wasn't even talking about adults there, right? He's talking about kids. I mean, that's where the debate is, because we do restrict what choices people are able to make at various
maybe I
stages.
missed it. It seems like if you're talking about wrestling teams and the like, we're not talking about 10-year-olds, right?
High school wrestling team, but
okay, some of whom might be adults.
Yeah, look, I don't even really want to limit people's right to put what they want to do with their own bodies, and if their parents co-sign it and a doctor co-signs it, it's just really none of my business at some point. But obviously, where, I don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson started wanting to make hormone-taking categories for the sports thing, and we can just look at public opinion. Most people accept that based on biological reality is the sports team you should be on. I don't want to use that to limit, people's choices in their self-pursuit of happiness or anything like that, but you can't be on the same sports team. Is that fair? Can that be a compromise position?
Well, I think for non-competitive sports, like most high school sports, intramural, whatever. Did you play sports in high school? Mm-hmm. Would you consider yourself to be a competitive athlete?
Yeah, it was competitive.
No, and that's not what I mean by competitive sports.
What
you did and what I did in high school, Robby, hate to break it to you, was not what I'm talking about with competitive sports. So most of us did what we did, which was play for fun. What it was.
I mean, one of my best friends who was on the track and cross country team, went to Cornell and ran at Cornell.
Yeah, and Joakim Noah went to my high school and went on to the NBA. Yeah, occasionally that happens.
Okay, but the point is,
I was not.
But none of the high school level, the girls cannot run against the males because they will all lose to every male, and so then they don't get to go to Cornell because they're not placing in the race because they're all getting beaten. So they need their own team where they only compete against women at the high school level. In fifth grade, it doesn't matter.
So part of why this is such a silly conversation, how many trans kids went to your high school?
I went to an all-male high school, so it's a totally different
Well, that doesn't
category.
preclude the idea of there being trans people there.
0.
I also didn't go to school with any trans people, and it turns out, given how few relative to the number of the population that there are, most people didn't go to school with any trans people. Now, I'm sure it's different. It's increasingly that not the case in younger generations of people, where there's more acceptance and more people come out and those kinds of things. But it feels like maybe there's a debate to be had about whether or not the people who maintain this building should get some of this tape up off the floor that's obviously not being used for marks anymore. But I can barely bring myself to care about it, because it's so infrequent. And then you hear the kind of bad faith of Bill Maher's arguments coming out when he starts to say things like, well, I just care about the health and safety of people. Well, that's why I asked the question about banning. I mean, if we're talking about people being able to make individual decisions. Should I tell Bill Maher that he shouldn't sit there and drink and smoke on his set because it's bad for his health? Should I tell him he shouldn't do marijuana? Sagar and Jetty was just tweeting about how there's these new negative effects of weed that have been reported. Should I tell him not to do drugs anymore because it's bad for his health?
I'm not going to tell adults what to do. I'm not even going to tell kids what to do. I don't care. But it's the sports. It's just so obvious that you can't have in some competitions where there's not strict sex differences, then it doesn't matter. But in high contact, highly physical sports, even at the high school level, it is competitive. You have to. We gender segregated these things for good reason, and are not going to undo them.
That's what I was going to say. Is that there's a world where we just say we're segregating based on height and weight and strength and hormone levels, how much testosterone. Right, but that doesn't necessarily map onto your gender identity. So what the as I understand it, the Olympics have done is to say, well, you have to have been on hormones for a certain period of time. You basically have to have brought your body in line with some kind of mean average for the gender expression that you are adopting. And that can get to the root of a lot of the inequity. Not necessarily, but it starts to get closer to the real core of it, which is, are people at a physical advantage over other people? Now, there was one little hang up and caveat in that, which is that folks who are very, very good at sports at the actual competitive level tend to be genetic anomalies to begin with. So you have Michael Phelps having like an extra rib or whatever it is, and an arm span that is disproportional and not what human beings normally have. You have the case of someone like Caster Semenya, who was stripped, right, of her ability to compete because although she was born and identified always as a woman, her testosterone levels were high. Now, is that just an advantage that she has, like Michael Phelps, that she was born with high testosterone levels? Or are we now going to say that it's not fair for her to compete against a woman because she's not a woman? And so I'm not trying to say that those fringe cases also should drive the rule. But given that, I don't know, like it does feel weird at this point, especially given the gravity of all that's going on in the world, that this is still Bill Maher's bugaboo.
Well, there's also a difference between sex and gender identity. Right, gender identity, just saying I'm, what my pronouns are today, and obviously young people are very more likely to identify as ambiguously gendered or not want a specific gender. And if you're roping in all those people to saying they can compete on what they've decided today is their sports category, that seems like a recipe for utter disaster.
Didn't I just say the opposite? Didn't I just point to the Olympics guidance, which has to do with people actually having taken hormones to a place and for a length of time, that they are aligned at least hormonally with what?
Well, and that might make sense. I'm saying but at the level of student athletes, it seems like it won't have progressed to that.
Yeah, well, look, I hope that Bill Maher finds some peace on this issue and that it doesn't haunt his dreams the way it seems to have been doing for the last few years.
Your concern for Bill Maher is really touching.
I just care about the health of all people. I'm a classical liberal.
More Rising right after this.